Right, we have our panelists here and I'd love them to weigh in on this. Of course, also we have a commissioner from the IEBC to tell us, ready or not, are we heading for the general election, and how prepared is the IEBC? And we can see also a contentious issue there that the IEBC cannot buy anyone from running for office if they are not convicted. Allow me to introduce our panelists this morning. We have with us Dr. Dorothy Akombe. She's a commissioner with the IEBC. Also, we have Irungu Houghton, who is the Associate Director of Society for International Development. We have Apollo Mboya. Apollo Mboya is the former CEO of the Law Society of Kenya and also an advocate of the High Court. We have with us Judge Morara, who is a Vice Chairman of Kenya National Commission on Human Rights. A very good morning, gentlemen and lady.
Good morning.
Thank you. First of all, let's begin with Dr. Dorothy, because you're here and this is our first story and people are wondering how we prepared or not, looking at the Daily Nation, what it says, IEBC test poll technology, but its readiness is in doubt. How ready are we?
Thank you very much. Just to maybe start by correcting that my name is Roselyn.
Roselyn.
I don't mind being baptized. Anyway,
forgive me.
I'll go with Roselyn for today. In terms of the preparation for elections,
Yes.
I think we can tell Kenyans that we are absolutely ready for the elections. There are various things that we've been doing in the last few months that make us confident that we are ready to have the election come the 8th of August. We have, as you can see, as you are aware, we have the technology in the country right now. We have 35,000 gadgets that are already here, 11,000 of which have been in use during the 1-month-long process of the verification of voters. We have embarked on an aggressive training program for our staff to avert the problems that we had in 2013, when a lot of the staff had not been trained either on the use of the technology, but also on the general procedures for the elections. We've already embarked on that training, and we'll be proceeding with the rest, the second bit of that training, once we recruit the presiding officers and the polling clerks, which the ads have gone out today. We've also been working very, very hard on the register,
yes,
on our register of voters. We're expecting to receive today the report from KPMG on the audit of the register.
Today is the day.
But we have, in preparation for that, we have all systems going. Chairman Chibukati has set up a team,
yes,
that is now already working 24 hours at anniversary hours, waiting to get the report of the audit report and start making improvements or implementing the recommendations that are there.
Yes.
And we have our logistics in place. That is very clear on where the various points of delivery of the material. There's so many other technical things that we've been doing to get ourselves ready for the election, and that is what gives us the confidence that we are ready to go to polls on the 8th of August.
All right. Maybe also you can also clarify for us, because the questions also abound on why the firing of the ICT director, just cutting it too close when we're just about to go for the general election, and also firing now of the procurement officer, right, because of delay on procuring the ballot papers.
On the first point, our ICT director has not been fired. Our ICT director has been asked to go on compulsory leave. And there was a reason for it. ICT is very fundamental for purposes of the 2017 election.
Yes.
We wanted to ensure that as we go into the election, we are sure about the technology that we have. We are sure about the licenses that we have that we're using for purposes of the elections. And we'd asked the audit department to look and see the status of those licenses, because there's one that had been cast into doubt. So we wanted to be sure that we were not going into an election without software that wasn't licensed, without architecture, the fundamental technology architecture that was not licensed. And the director failed to cooperate with the audit. And that cast fears and aspersions on our side, and we asked him to step aside so that we can be able to have an objective look at what was going on.
So is there any rhyme or reason for this non-cooperation from the officer?
That is, for us, that is something that we'll deal with at a later time. For now, what we wanted to make sure is that the process of auditing the licenses was not being hindered by any person or any staff. And for now, that has proceeded well. We have an acting ICT director who has been doing a fantastic job. You saw that during the nomination process, we deployed technology of the CRMS, what we're calling the Candidate Registration Management System, yes, which is technology-based, which went on flawlessly. Mm-hmm. Today we are testing the technology, the entire architecture, and that is being led by the acting director. On the second issue of the procurement director.
So you're testing, before you've even gone for the procurement, you're testing the entire, technology.
Yes.
Do you have any margin, sort of to speak, a margin of error if it fails? We're in June now, yes, remaining with July. Suppose this technology fails, then what? What is the backup plan?
That's what we're going to see today. That is why we are going to have to test that technology today, and we've been working very closely with political parties. We have a forum called the Election Technology Advisory Committee that is made up of representatives of both major political parties, and the political parties liaison committee, and also professional institutions that are dealing with technology. So we'll see once that test goes out, but that is a legal requirement. There's a legal requirement for us to test that technology today, the 9th of August,
okay,
9th of June. That is why we are doing it today. We know that it might have issues because we have not yet finalized all our architecture. We know that it might not perform 100%. Yes. But that is why we have the rest of the remaining a month or so to continue testing it and improving it and looking at the areas where we might have weaknesses. But today is an important date. It's a legislative date that we cannot not abide to. Mm-hmm. So I think that is what we are doing in terms of technology. In terms of the procurement director, it would be important for Kenyans to have a look at the reports that came out from the procurement review board. And it is a very damning report. What it says is that the process that was done to procure the ballot papers was fundamentally flawed, that it cannot stand the test set out in the Constitution and the Procurement Act. If you are left with reports like that touches on the Constitution, not just the laws, but also the Constitution, and casts aspersions on the ability of your staff to understand the enormity of the task that has been given to them, and these are words that I'm quoting from that report, then you are left with no choice but to ask the person to step aside and allow other people who understand the role that they have been given, the important trust that the Kenyan people have put in them, to be able to work and ensure that they do work according to the law, right, and according to the Constitution.
But why is it like every other time we have the electioneering period, we have procurement issues? And why are we remaining none the wiser? We cannot even learn from the other previous general election that we had. Cases of procurement, rules being floated, still we are here again, people going to court because people are not following proper procurement regulations. Is this deliberate?
I think there are larger issues that the country needs to look at, not just in IEBC, but generally in all our institutions and how we are managing those.
But the spotlight is on the procurement within the IEBC,
and that is why we are taking action. We could have, you're talking about time being very short, and why are we doing this now? It is important for us to take action now. When you see things that are going and are not going on in the right way, and you take action, why should you be criticized for doing that?
But for heaven's sake, we've been here for 5 good years.
Unfortunately,
why do we do things under the wire that we don't even have?
Unfortunately, as new commissioners, we've been only in office for 4 months, and in those 4 months, we are looking at places where the law needs to be followed. We are looking at places where there are failures, and we're taking action. And that is what we've done with the procurement, and we're looking, and this is a message that we're sending very strongly to our staff, that we will not condone anything that comes in our way of ensuring that we deliver free and fair and credible elections to Kenyan people.
Irungu, don't you think this is just a deja vu? We've been here before talking about procurement. We're heading towards general election again. We have procurement cases. We have integrity issues cases.
I think, first of all, I wanted to acknowledge Dr. Roselyn Akombe. She was on television late last night. She's woken up this morning, come straight into the studio. At some point, she will change jobs and become, I think, a pundit or a political commentator. But more seriously, I think it's important to recognize that, that the work that the IEBC is engaged in is really at a critical stage. Yes. It's at a critical stage for two reasons. I think one is in terms of continuing to inspire public confidence in the integrity of the systems and in the processes, and they have to keep the public confidence together. And the second one really is to make sure that the technical systems, the procedures, have integrity. And I think the release of the procurement officer really comes into is a response to the second of this. So in a sense, I think we can encourage the IEBC to do all that they need to do in order to make sure that the procurement systems have integrity, that they are not being manipulated by any party for unfair advantage in this coming elections. And really, to be honest, the issue of integrity is not just out there in the political space. It is really even within our constitutional commissions and our independent offices. I think one of the biggest areas that we have been looking towards the IEBC is to make sure that they give us a clean list before the elections. And I think the EACC list that was released last week, I think 106 names, of which 83 or 82 of those individuals essentially don't meet the threshold of what we would call ethical leadership in that case. And that document is now available on the website www.redcardke.co.ke, and that's available for all Kenyans to look at, particularly voters, to see potentially whether their governors, their senators, their women's representatives will come with baggage or will come with tainted legacies and therefore endanger the public monies going forward. So I think I just want to encourage IEBC to continue moving as quickly. They've got a deadline that actually should be called a death line, because actually there are several points at which if they do not do what they need to do, sadly we will end up in courts. And we may not even have an election. We will simply be watching.
We scuttle the whole process. Let's hear from Apollo Mboya on the issue of procurement. Why are we none the wiser, or why is IEBC none the wiser?
Thank you very much. Now, first of all, I also want to encourage, but IEBC needs more than encouragement. Coming from having been privileged as a rapporteur, one of the rapporteurs for the Joint Parliamentary Committee that came up with the Election Offences Act and also the Election Laws Amendment 2016, before they started changing them in 2017. I can talk with a hindsight that the committee then, and this was a parliamentary committee of both houses, had envisaged first the vetting of staff once the new commissioners come in.
Yes.
Okay. That never happened. All what we are seeing right now is piecemeal, stepping aside and sacking. Okay. They should have dealt with that as the first issue. And that was in the report that I was privileged to have participated in drafting. So that's one issue. Secondly, I also want to encourage the electoral management body to be reading other literatures like the Kriegler report. That talks about what you need not do at this stage. For example, changing of laws, turbulence with the staff, because we are actually 2 months to the election date. Yes. So those are issues. Secondly, the question of audit, and I think the country is waiting with bated breath today to see that report. Now, there is a question of sequencing, and I've always had a problem with that. The sequencing of what was the processes that were going on. As the audit was going on, the members of the public were being told to go and verify. Okay? There was a problem there. The problem is this. You cannot verify, then an audit then comes later on. An audit can be so damning, okay, that, and I don't want to guess, can be so damning that even what you are verifying, that register you are verifying, is so bad that we might not even use it for election, for example.
Yes.
I'm just giving you an example. So what should have happened? First, we should have had the audit report.
Then we have the verification.
Then we go and verify. So the question of sequencing was problematic, and I'm happy Senator is here because he was a member of that Joint Parliamentary Committee. He'll talk more about that. So those are the issues that were envisaged even by the committee, that the sequencing of audit was to come first and then verification, not the other way around. Now, today I think is the last day for verification.
Yes.
And today is also the date that the audit report is coming out. So you see that problem. And then lastly, there were laws that came out of that process by the Joint Parliamentary Committee. One of them was the Election Offences Act.
Yes.
Whereby the committee removed all the election offences from all other laws and domiciled everything into one statute called the Election Offences Act.
Yes.
One of the provisions of that Election Offences Act, Section 14 to be precise, provides that no government, that is both the national and the county government, shall advertise its achievements during the election period. The election period again is defined there, that it's the date when IEBC announces the date, gazettes the date,
yes,
to until the date of pronouncement of the election results. Of course, we know government portal and everything. And now what are we seeing? On 23rd of May, the leader of majority in parliament has now published a bill to change the Election Offences Act, 2 months to election, to do away with that particular provision. And taking into account that there's a court case, which I'm prosecuting in court.
Yes.
So those are the issues.
Right. Those are the issues, of course, talking of cases as well. We have, and of course, we won't get into the merits and demerits of this. You are seeking an adversary opinion from the courts on the Leadership and Integrity Act itself, yeah, as in regard to actually the forthcoming general election.
Yes, we are. But before I respond to that, Debarl, let me also just make a brief comment on what my colleagues have said, especially yes, starting with Commissioner Akombe. I'm glad that they're doing the systems testing today. In 2013, I remember very vividly when this exercise was conducted at the Southern Sun. We had all gone there to see whether the results, then we were testing the results transmission
yes,
technology. And there was spectacular failure at that point in time. None of the results were transmitted. And what we were told was not to worry because that was just a mock exercise. But unfortunately, even as we approached the elections,
yes,
it turned out that the problem that had been identified at that time had not been rectified, because we all remember about 10 in the morning, 9, there was massive failure of the whole system. So I really hope that this time round, as this exercise is being conducted, it's being conducted with the purpose that Dr. Akombe said, which is to point out the deficiencies and make the necessary corrections. On the whole issue of leadership and integrity, it points out to even what Apollo is saying. One of the requirements of ethical leadership is to really follow the rule of law and order. And if there's a provision like the one that is referred to, the Election Offences Act of 2016, Section 14, subsection 2, that clearly bars state officers from participating in partisan political campaigns,
yes,
and they flagrantly go ahead and do that, then that casts really aspersions on the integrity of those leaders. So what we've done, and I know the other panelists will speak to this, is to go to court to seek a definitive direction from the Supreme Court, because I think the lower courts, the High Court and the Courts of Appeal, have given us conflicting rulings and judgments on the whole issue of leadership and integrity, and we have a feeling that unless we have a very clear direction on that, we'll continue having problems whereby there's one set of laws that seem to apply, especially for appointed positions, and another set of laws, especially for elected positions. So we want a definitive interpretation of this, and that's why we've gone to the Supreme Court.
All right. Mutula, Kilonzo, good morning.
Morning,
Right.
Debarl.
Yeah, welcome to the program. Of course, a issue of preparedness is what we are focusing on,
Yes,
and of course also leadership and integrity. But first, do you think IEBC is ready for the general election?
As we speak, we are not certain. Apollo Mboya and I sat in the Joint Select Committee. He was a joint rapporteur. First, I must say that I'm happy that they are doing the testing today, because we anticipated that they would do the testing 60 days before the elections.
Yeah.
But that's not enough. The idea of building confidence towards the 60 days was key. Testing was not done in isolation. we had already identified that there were gaps in the transmission of data to the tallying centers. So other than just testing the equipment which they have purchased, the IEBC should give assurance to Kenyans that every place where you either have 2G network, 3G network, no network at all, you have transmission of results within a specified period. The idea is not to test, because as my colleague has said here, they tested the equipment last time. They were warned last time that they were going to fail.
Yes.
Testing whether the battery is working or not is not good enough. They need to give us an assurance. In these several polling stations, 44,000, do we have 44,000 KIMs? They are called KIMs, the equipment. Do we have spare batteries? Do we have backup? This issue that brought so much acrimony in Parliament and National Assembly and Senate about this so-called alternative mechanism.
Yes.
What is that about? Now, the regulations concerning the technology have been published. What concerns me, and maybe the Commissioner can respond, is that they have no date, commencement date. They have been published. There's no commencement dates. So I'm wondering whether even in the regulations on technology, regulations on verification and identification of voters, when those things are supposed to commence. On what I had my good friend and colleague Apollo Mboya mention on the register, the integrity of this election in its entirety, other than the transmission of results, will be the register. We are coming from a situation where IEBC went into the last general elections with no register. Let's just be honest. They pretended they had a register, they didn't have a register. They published a register late after one collapsed and took us to a general election without a register. What IEBC should do, because we anticipated in the law that we will get a report into the National Assembly and Senate before the elections, is what we are going to do if we find 5%, 10% of the register is compromised. What are we going to do? What do you tell that Kenyan who thought or who imagine is in the register and is not in the register? Those are some of the issues that they need to tell us. And we proposed, and I don't know why they have not complied, in the law, in section 44. We requested them, because coming from the experience of the last general elections, and let me explain. In the last general elections, they appointed Mr. Otiende Amolo to be the chair of all commissions. So they were supposed to sit and confirm that IEBC were ready for the general elections. So they kept giving them the assurance that they were. Eventually, they told them we are not subject to direction by anybody. So to remove that anomaly, we set up a consultative forum which has every stakeholder, civil society, political players, media, so that step by step the commission can set up that commission so that everything is out and available, so that we don't ask these questions while seated before you and Kenyans are watching, because then we look as if we don't know what we are doing, like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing.
Yes.
So that consultative forum is where Chebukati and his team have failed us, because 60 days to the last general elections, we should all be speaking the same language. You should all be saying there's a level playing field, we are prepared with this, we are sure that this is not going to happen. But most importantly, I just want to know that in those regulations that they've come up with, because they've put regulations on what will happen if you do not find your biometrics, that every Kenyan should go step by step to understand. We don't want them to be surprised on the 8th of August that your biometric is not there, you're not allowed to vote, yet the regulations have a specific method. Because people need to be trained. You will have to train agents on what they have proposed. They have a system. They will say if he arrives at the polling station and his biometric is not there, there will be a process. The presiding officer will call agents, etc., etc. It is that consultative forum by IEBC that is supposed to educate Kenyans as we go along. We're supposed to learn all the steps, not to 8th of August and all of us are surprised.
Right, so talking about educating Kenyans, it seems also IEBC has been slow on the uptake when it comes to civic education, right? And I heard, you know, some people talking about, what about the symbol of X and the tick? So many people, you know, machinani do not really understand what the X and the ticks, they all mean. Do you also agree with the views that are being held by Senator Mutula Kilonzo in terms of preparedness, civic education also, you're really wanting? A raft of issues is raised. Maybe you want to address them very briefly?
Sure, thank you very much. Thank you, Senator Kilonzo, for raising the points that you have. Just to confirm that the regulations are in place, they are being implemented. They came into force the day they were published. Actually, pretty much after Parliament approved, gave their consent, we started the implementation. The committee that you have mentioned is actually in place. It's the Election Technology Advisory Committee, as provided for in the regulations. It is made up of representatives from the majority party in Parliament, representative from the minority party in Parliament, representative from a professional firm that is ISACA, which is representing the professional institutions. It also has representation from the political parties as a whole. So we have a representative from the political parties liaison committee, PPLC. And the committee has actually been meeting very regularly, and we've been very pleased with the contributions that they have been making. The whole results transmission RTS system was actually initiated from the very beginning with the participation of ETAC and with their contribution. The simulation exercise that is being done today is also done with ETAC, with the ETAC members. They have given us some inputs, including on specific things that they would have wanted to have changed in our whole KIM system. So just want to assure you that that committee is in place, and we're working very closely with them. It's the committee meetings. I am a member of that committee. It's chaired by Professor Gulier, who's the chair commissioner in charge of IT-related things in the commission. It's one of the most interesting meetings you have, quite explosive in most cases, but also very engaging and very professional in terms of views that people bring on board. So we believe that this is an important committee, and we are working with them as we move on implementing the whole issue of the use of technology in elections. And, you know, I think it's important to really acknowledge the deficiencies we have in our country in terms of network coverage. I have seen the reports from the Senate and also from the National Assembly that acknowledged that a large part of this country does not have 3G network. And for transmission of results, you do need to have a 3G network, you know, in most parts of the country. That is not the case. And that is why what we have done as a commission is that we brought together, and again working with ETAC, we brought together the three main providers, that is Airtel, Safaricom, and must be one more. Telcom. And, yes, or formerly Orange. And we have been in discussions with them on how to ensure that we have as much coverage of the country as possible. And this entails zoning actually the country into parts in which the various providers have better coverage. So you know, let's say Safaricom has better coverage in Nairobi, then they'll take Nairobi, and then there'll be a plan B for another telecom company. And for those places where we know very well that we don't have network coverage, then they will provide satellite coverage. So those are the things that we've been working with them to ensure that we put that infrastructure in place. I'm not sure that for the test today, they will have zoned everything and they would have covered everything, including the satellite network yet. So what you will see today is the first part of it, of seeing will it be able to transmit? Because the problems that we had actually in 2013, it was not even network. It's that the system had not been configured to even be able to transmit. And you will hear staff tell us, they kept on being told, don't worry, even if it does not work now on election day, it's going to work. But it wasn't even a network issue. That was not even a network issue. It was a software issue, whereby the software that they were using from Face Technologies was not compatible with the hardware from Saffron. And that is why we took a very difficult decision this year and said, we know we'll be bashed by Kenyans, but we're going to go with Saffron. And we're going to have only one company do everything and be responsible, and we hold them accountable for it, rather than have different companies that come in.
That was actually the recommendation, that you use one company for both.
But I think, Senator, you also raised an important issue on whether we've read the Kriegler report. I think we've read it all. All of us have read it back and forth, and I think Apollo has also alluded to it. I think we've read in detail. There are things that are beyond us. I mean, about recommendations in the report about laws not being changed a year or 2 years before elections. Those are things that are beyond us, that you should be asking Senator Kilonzo. You know, issues about you know, even us as commissioners coming into place 6 months before elections, 7 months before elections. You know, so I mean there are many things that we've picked. You know, the things we've picked from the Krugler report are on exactly that, on the technology, ensuring that you're dealing with one company rather than several. Training, that we focused a lot on that. Testing the technology. And the register, which is what has been critical, which is what we've been spending a lot of our time trying to ensure that we have a clear register.
Right, changing the election laws, and I think Apollo's alluded to the fact of we have the majority leader in the National Assembly who's seeking actually to amend the Election Act, right? So the election offences. Yes. So you know, if we hear from you, hasn't he read then the Krugler report himself?
Apollo.
Not Apollo, the majority leader.
Yes. I think sometimes we have to recognize that actually, not just in politics, but just in life, people know one thing, but act completely opposed to what the knowledge is. I mean, knowing something makes no difference. Actually, what we need to ask is what are the political interests and what are the powerful interests that are behind this last-minute introduction. And I think, you know, like we saw last year with the attempt to rush through amendments to the election laws, they are destabilizing, they are a grave risk to a consensus that is required in order to have a free and fair elections. It makes the work of the IEBC more difficult. And to be honest, it actually plunges the voters into positions where they actually begin to distrust the rules of the game. So it's actually bad legislation, if you ask me. It's bad timing, and I think it's even, it doesn't even create the environment in which whatever is agreed in Parliament will be agreed out there in the Republic. So I think we can safely say that this is not helpful, if we're being polite. If we are being slightly more direct, we can say this actually endangers the quality of our electoral process.
You're right, Apollos.
Yeah, again, for me, the issues regarding the sequencing is still a major problem, and I think the audit should have come much earlier, and the audit report should have landed in the National Assembly and the Senate, so that they look at this. Now, as rightly been pointed out by the Senator, if at all the report that we are going to get today, and God forbid, that the report says that that register is 30%, okay, compromised, and if it is 30% compromised, or even 15% compromised, that's a very, very bad indictment, and it then states then that register you cannot use it for election, basically. So you see, and yet people have verified. So I still have a problem with that. The question of Election Offences Act, and here is where I want to request even the IEBC, they should be vocalizing, yes, their opposition to changes into the law. Senator will confirm to you, the DPP sat with us when we were coming with this. And we took on board everything that the DPP wanted to be in that law. Right now, everybody is mute when, again, the tinkering starts. And also, just to take you back again, after the Joint Parliamentary Committee midwifed the election amendment laws of 2016, it didn't take even 4 months, and then a push started to amend the same law. And this is a law that passed without even removing a comma. But within four months, I think there were already amendments to it, and so we had election of amendment 2017. And right now, 2 months to election, again, one of the principal election laws that came out of that process is being proposed to be amended. And National Assembly is supposed to go on recess on 15th. Is that right?
Yes.
Less than 2 weeks. So you can. It's a serious issue.
So is it a political interest that we are seeing here? Because is this for the public good, or some people just want, you know, to put their corner safely?
The main issue is this. An election offense has already occurred and solidified. So even if it is changed, it has already occurred. Okay? It's too late. It's too late. Somebody has just realized, and I pointed it out because I remember this very vividly,
Yes.
and the reasons why that particular provision was put there. It was supposed to provide a fair playing field for candidates.
Yes.
Yeah, who are coming to contest the election but are not in government. So that provision was put there so that everybody can have a fair playing field. Now, which means that fair playing field has not been honored already.
Right. Let's hear from Morara.
Yeah, I think for me, it's really worrying that the leader of majority is bringing this bill this late in the day.
Yes.
Like it has been clearly said, precisely 60 days to the elections. And if you look at the memorandum of objects and reasons for this bill, they are purporting to have bringing it in defense of Article 35 of the Constitution, which is access to information. We have actually, again, as a commission, taken a very strong position on this, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, and we have written an advisory strongly objecting to the passage of this bill into law, because clearly, as Apollo has said, the mischief that this section was supposed to cure was where the incumbents used their power to really dole goodies and take advantage of incumbency to gain political mileage. The government in power had over 4.5 years to sell their policies, to tell Kenyans what it is that they're doing. And ideally, a proper reading of Article 35 would be the access to information is not only limited to cherry picking and where you just tell people about the good things that you've done as a government. Access to information should be viewed in its totality, because it's supposed to be an avenue for promoting government accountability, but not an avenue really for the party in power to propagate its own partisan political interests. And Kenyans, if they want to know what the Jubilee government has actually done and all this, then they can rely on the access to information, go out there, get the information, without what we're being told now that that section 14.2 of the Election Offences Act is actually an infringement of Article 35. That's not our reading, and we've issued an advisory to that extent.
All right, thank you.
On what the commissioner said, the most important thing about what they are doing is not that they are having robust discussions or they are having long meetings, is that Kenyans should be aware of what they are doing. And that's what they are not doing.
So they've been very cagey with the information.
The information is not being shared. The desperation you see in Kenyans, propaganda about whether they are prepared or not, will continue for as long as they sit in boardrooms, lock themselves, talk, and don't involve anybody. The consultative forum was supposed to be open. I'm disappointed in the Election Technology Committee. We had proposed a much wider committee, but for some strange reason, the IEBC proposed a much smaller committee, which involved the majority leader of the National Assembly and minority. I mean, I don't understand the idea of having one person sitting in such a committee to represent the interests of Kenyans. I don't think it's representative. The person who is the majority leader of a party, his work is just to speak on behalf of their party in parliament, but not to represent everybody.
The question will be then, what is the criteria being used to have this particular technology advisory committee, the members?
The membership was reduced from the earlier proposal that we had made, because it was supposed to be computer society. There's no civil society in it. There's the political parties, PPLC. I'm not quite sure it's that representative. But the point is that as they walk along this process, step by step, Kenyans should know what they are doing. On the election offenses, there is a misconception, Debarl, that the election offenses will be committed after the election. If an election offense is committed today, the person should be prosecuted. Duale should not have the opportunity to go and for his party to commit an offense, then use his privilege as a member of parliament to go and propose to amend and give to the person who has committed the offense, if it's the president, to then sign the bill into law. If you look at your page 9 of The Nation, the president is dishing out title deeds, several of them, and promising many things. Those are the things that we are talking about in the election offenses. So if the president does this, what would you think a governor will do? The governor will go and promise new projects, you promise boreholes, and that is exactly what we were concerned about, that persons in office would use that privilege to unduly influence voters to vote for them to the detriment of the other persons who are not enjoying the same privilege of power. That is the point. At this point, the DPP is asleep, deep asleep, or maybe he's out of the country and his office is shut down. IEBC, who are supposed to enforce these things, are also very quiet. They're concentrating on the wrong things, in court interpreting things they shouldn't be in the first place, instead of ensuring that these offenses, because we worked with them through this process of having a strict timeline. Now, who is monitoring the use of public resources? There are people talking about cabinet secretaries not campaigning. What about public resources? GK cars, county government vehicles are in the campaign trail. Who is monitoring these things? This is abuse of public funds. And yet it's in the constitution, it's in the law. Who is going to save this country, Debarl?
Who's going to save this country? A good probing question there. And,